but we are 3-1 on the season with our player prop best bets. And this week, we're going to go over to that game between the Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies. And we're looking maybe at a player that the market doesn't hasn't accounted for properly. And that's going to be John Collins. His points and rebounds to go over the projection right now of 22.5 as it stands. And there's a couple of reasons why I like this prop here for John Collins. Number one, they are going to be the Utah Jazz without their starting center, Walker Kessler, for at least 2 weeks. He is dealing with an elbow injury. And I think that number one opens up more opportunities for a guy like John Collins to get his, compensate for the rebounds that Walker Kessler was getting. So in the first game without Walker Kessler, John Collins finished the game with 14 points and 9 rebounds. And that number on his rebounds did bump up, where in the previous 2 games, he had 6 rebounds each. And that number went up to 9 in that game against the Pacers. Also, I do expect the shot volume to go up for him as well. He has 3 straight games of 14 points thus far this over the last 3 games is what I should mention. And they did play Memphis earlier this year, did the Utah Jazz at home, where John Collins finished that game with 16 points. He had 12 shot attempts in that game. So when we're looking at it from a perspective of who's really going to fill that void with Walker Kessler being out for the Utah Jazz here, I think John Collins is in a prime spot here. And Walker Kessler on the season was averaging 8.3 points, but more importantly, also 7.9 rebounds for the Utah Jazz. But I think John Collins will fill this void, the void of Walker Kessler very nicely. So points and rebounds here, over 22.5 for John Collins here. Sleepy, what are we thinking about this one?
I could tell that you know what you're talking about when it comes to player props, because you don't actually look at the player that you're wagering on. You look at the other players around him or other players on the other team. And that's how you win at this. When you're betting player props, you just don't look at the guy and just be like, oh, I think he's going to do this. Well, why? Because this player is going to affect this player. And the fact that you identified Kessler as the guy that you were looking at, I really like this pick now, because I'm looking at another guy on Utah that I think actually helps out John Collins here. And I think it's Jordan Clarkson. Utah hasn't won a game in how many games now? It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 games in a row they lost. And look at what Clarkson did in the last game. Shot 23 times, put up a ton of shots. You end up losing that way. Go back to when John Collins was more productive, at least on the point scoring. They were winning games at least. So I think that they say, look, we don't have Kessler. We need to get the ball out of Clarkson's hands, and we need to go ahead and kind of dummy this down a little bit. And let's go back to actually what was working a little bit. More Markkanen, more Collins, more ground and pound down in the paint. And I think Collins is going to have a big day. I don't want to say that I think that he can just go ahead and beat this number on points alone, but I think there's a pretty good chance that he's well into the 20s here. So I actually like this prop quite a bit, and I feel like we're getting a pretty good number here.